What I encourage people to do basically is just start where they are and add. If you can get a third to a half of your plate to be vegetables, then the other half you want to be whole grains and beans.
I knew that food was linked to your own health, but I also knew that food was delicious and it made you feel good and it helped you celebrate things with your family.
People that consume whole grains tend to live significantly longer, have lower rates of heart disease, diabetes, stroke, obesity.
I found that people enjoyed good food, and it really doesn't matter what's on the plate as long as it's good. If you can make a meat-free meal better than a meal that has meat, I don't think people really care that much.
Grains have provided the foundation for human existence since the dawn of civilization. African societies have been nourished by sorghum and millet. Asian cultures by buckwheat and rice. Even the ancient Aztecs revered the flowering perennial amaranth for its supernatural powers, worthy of the gods. Today, grains remain a cornerstone of our diet around the world, and a closer examination is revealing surprising implications for our health.
Whole grains are essential to the diet. They are actually the cornerstone of a healthy, whole food, plant-based diet. Whole grains are where you get your complex carbohydrates in particular. So they're loaded with fiber, they're loaded with protein. You can get at least 10% of your daily protein needs from whole grains like quinoa, millet, oats, and bulgur.
People that consume whole grains tend to live significantly longer, have lower rates of heart disease, diabetes, stroke, obesity. We did interventional trials where you split people up into two groups, and half you make eat oatmeal for a couple of weeks, and the other half continue the regular diet. And then you can see, oh, the only thing that we did differently was just adding the oatmeal, and then we can see what happens. And with those kind of studies, you can show that adding whole grains to people's diets can significantly lower blood pressure, help control blood sugars, and help control cholesterol. These are critical risk factors for some of our deadliest diseases, such as heart disease.
While a vast majority of people understand the impact of their dietary habits, modern food choices can be difficult to navigate. Over the last century, dramatic advances in industrial farming and food manufacturing have produced a flood of convenient, cheap, and tasty processed foods. Today, roughly 60% of the calories consumed in the U.S. come from heavily processed food products that often include refined grains, a major dietary shift that's having a profound impact on public health.
There's chemicals in this food that you can't even read the ingredients on the label. You can't understand some of these ingredients. These are usually cheap foods, they're not very nutritious, and they're making our kids fat and unhealthy. They're malnourished, so they're bulking up on all this carb and cheap, kind of soy-enhanced product, yet they're not getting any nutrition. And that's what's leading to some of the health problems in our country.
The number one cause of death in the United States is our diet. 97% of Americans eat fiber-deficient diets, don't even reach the recommended minimum daily intake of fiber. 98% of Americans don't get enough potassium or eating potassium-deficient diets. Why? Because they're not eating enough plants.
For experts, the health consequences of the modern diet are worrisome. Recent data from the American Heart Association places strokes as one of the leading causes of death around the world, with over 17 million casualties each year. By 2030, This number is expected to surpass 23 million. These statistics hit close to home for chef Kate Jacoby and prompted her, from a young age, to rethink the close ties between food and health.
My father had had heart disease ever since I knew him. He had had this major issue. When I was in 5th grade, he had had double bypass surgery. And I learned very early on like how that was going to impact our home and what was in our cabinets and the foods that we would eat. I actually learned to make bran muffins for him because that was something that we were told would be great if he would eat more bran muffins. It would keep his cholesterol low. And I swear I could, like, blindfolded, one arm behind my back, make, 2 dozen bran muffins. And that was like my signature thing.
Using her personal experience as a catalyst for positive change, Chef Jacoby has been crafting healthy yet delectable plates alongside Chef Rich Landau at Veg Restaurant in Center City, Philadelphia.
So again, you're going to need a lot of utensils with this. I see food as such a personal thing that, you grow up with what your family is, feeding you, and then your own personal habits. It's so personal that it can be very off-putting if somebody is like preaching to you. So, we never want to preach to people. We just want to sort of give an example of something that we feel is great for us. And if people think it's delicious, then that's great.
I found that people enjoyed good food, and it really doesn't matter what's on the plate as long as it's good. If you can make a meat-free meal better than a meal that has meat, I don't think people really care that much.
Experts have been touting the health benefits of plant-based foods for decades. Lower risks of chronic diseases have been associated with a higher intake of vegetables, whole grains, fruits, and legumes. One recent study found that eating just 3 servings of whole grains a day was just as effective at lowering blood pressure as some commonly prescribed medications. The resulting decrease could reduce the risk of having a heart attack by 15% and the risk of having a stroke by up to 25%.
What I encourage people to do basically is just start where they are and add. And if you think of a 9-inch plate, right, for lunch or for dinner, if you can get 1/3 to 1/2 of your plate to be vegetables, then the other half you want to be whole grains and beans. What we mean by whole grains as opposed to refined grains is that the whole grain actually still contains the fiber, the bran, and the germ. It has not been removed. They have not been processed out, and that's where all of the nutrients are.
The difference between whole grains and refined grains is they start with a whole grain like brown rice, whole wheat, and then they refine it. They remove the outer layers, and that's where most of the nutrition is. And so you start out with hundreds or thousands of phytonutrients in this, and you strip it down to just a few, and then by law, because it's so nutrient depleted, they actually have to add back, they have to spray some vitamins back on, so people don't start dying from things like beriberi, which is a vitamin B deficiency caused by the refining of brown rice to white rice. Killed lots of people until we realized, oh, that's what was happening. This was a nutrient deficiency disease induced by food processing.
When you read an ingredients label on a packaged item and it says enriched something. So enriched flour means that they've taken the bran, the germ, and the fiber out, and they've added maybe about 6 to 7 synthetic nutrients back in. When you're eating white bread, when you're eating white rice, when you're eating white pasta, it basically converts like sugar into your body, and it spikes the blood sugar level. People are concerned about sugar itself, but white flour products are very unhealthy foods to eat for that reason. They're very, very harmful, very dangerous, and they can actually shorten your life. There's absolutely no reason for people to eat any refined processed grains. They're that unhealthy.
I encourage people to not just go whole grains, that's a great step, but even better, do intact grains. Eat grains as we were meant to eat them, with just chewing them instead of putting them through a mill, and then it actually leaves bits and pieces behind for our good gut bacteria to eat, and it's actually absorbed very slowly, naturally into our body. So I'm talking about, oatmeal, quinoa. You can actually see the individual grains rather than flour products, something like pasta or bread.
Quinoa is an ancient crop traditionally consumed in the Andean region of South America that's quietly made its way out of health food stores into more mainstream supermarkets and restaurants. It was called the mother grain by the Incas and is widely considered a superfood given its high nutrient content and because it's loaded with fiber, vital minerals, protein, and antioxidants. But quinoa's greatest culinary asset might be its versatility.
One of the things we like to do the most is pair our food with each other. Think about what's sweet, what's spicy, what's creamy, what's savory, what's nutty, what's earthy in everything you're cooking, and find the perfect balance. So quinoa for me is very nutty. It's got this really wonderful, almost crunchy texture to it. Autumn squash is creamy and rich and sweet. They're a perfect match for each other. What we like to do is use delicata squash, which is a torpedo-shaped squash. It's got a light yellow flesh, and it's sweet and really, really creamy, full of just delicious flavor. We cut these down into rings, and we scoop out the seeds and roast them in the oven with just a little bit of salt and pepper and a little bit of spice. Next thing, we take the quinoa and we cook that with just a little bit of, we like to call them Thanksgiving spices, a little bit of allspice, a touch of clove, a little bit of cumin, and finish it with a little bit of rosemary. And then we take our peppers, all sorts of different autumn peppers, and we saute them in a pan with a little bit of garlic and olive oil. And that little bit of heat you get from the peppers, combined with the nuttiness of the quinoa and the sweet creaminess of the squash, makes this incredibly perfect dish.
Unfortunately, in today's world, not all grains are created equal, and many of the ways we consume them are radically reducing their biggest benefits. While it's relatively easy to select different types of raw grains to cook, it can be challenging to sort out the myriad of whole grain claims advertised on many processed foods.
Even if it says whole grains in the ingredients list, they obviously highly process that to remove the fiber and remove much of the other nutrition. And so that's why you want to put that back on the shelf and stick to really intact whole grains as much as possible. But if you are going to buy a packaged whole grain product like bread or like breakfast cereal, I encourage people to stick to the 5-to-1 fiber rule, meaning you look at the nutrition facts label and you want to make sure that the amount of carbohydrates to fiber is 5-to-1 or less. So if you have something that says 15 grams of carbohydrates per serving, you want to make sure that there's 3 or more grams of fiber so you get that 5-to-1 ratio. And that just gives you a sense of how little processing went on.
Gluten has become a major concern for many consumers of packaged grain products in the past few years. Yet, research has shown that for the vast majority of people, those concerns are largely unwarranted and could actually be detrimental to their health.
There's some people that need to avoid gluten, which is a protein found in certain types of grains. For those people, they need to go on completely gluten-free diets their entire lives. That's less than 1% of people. And then maybe about another 1% have what's called non-celiac gluten sensitivity, meaning they don't have celiac disease, but do seem to experience gastrointestinal symptoms like chronic diarrhea when they eat gluten-containing grains. And so for, maybe 2% of the population may want to stay away from gluten, but for 98% of people, right, for the other, 49 out of 50 people, then gluten is a health-promoting plant protein, just like other health-promoting plant proteins. It should not be avoided.
Today, it's easier than ever to incorporate a wide range of grains from around the world into your diet and transform them into a sumptuous foundation for virtually any meal.
Grains can be really, really delicious if you cook them right. And the big secret is that they're very, very easy to cook. Grains are easy because most of it is hands-off. You can get something as simple as a rice cooker and cook some really great rices in there. They're delicious and they're so good for you, and it takes literally the click of a button in a rice cooker to cook them. And the beauty of it is you can salt it early and you can put any kind of seasonings in there. Use saffron threads, some curry spice, some Moroccan tagine spice, some Caribbean jerk spice. Throw anything like that into your grains and let them cook, and they absorb it as they go. And without any work whatsoever, when that timer goes off, you have a beautiful pot of grains.
After thousands of years, grains remain the cornerstone of the human diet. They provide the foundation for much of what we eat and are a major source of many vital nutrients. With the emergence of more positive health studies, many experts hope for an even greater desire to move grains to the center of our plates as part of a broader shift toward healthier, plant-based diets.
We now know that some of our most common chronic diseases, such as high blood pressure and heart disease and type 2 diabetes, these diseases can only be prevented but arrested and reversed with a healthy enough diet and lifestyle.
We have to take control. We have to understand that really healthy plant-based foods are the best foods that we can eat, so we need to add more of them to our plate. And there's no shame in wanting to eat healthy food. There's no shame in wanting to be healthy. Everyone is not going to choose to eat plant-based foods, but everyone should have the right to the information so that they can make that choice.